What if I told you that most people you meet aren't lying with words, they're lying with intent? Not all liars wear masks, but all manipulation wears recognizable patterns. Today, we're going deep into the psychology of deceit, not just to spot it, but to transcend it. You've been conditioned to trust people, parents, teachers, friends, and that conditioning becomes your blind spot. There's a subtle art to deception that doesn't rely on what's said, but how it's said. Liars don't argue with facts, they distort context with questions. And once you understand their questions, you understand their strategy. This isn't just about spotting untruths, it's about raising your psychological immunity. Stick with me, and you'll never view conversations the same way again. Every human being lies. Some lie to protect, others to deceive. And the difference lies not in the act, but the intention. Before we break down the 5 questions liars always ask, we have to understand what lying is from a psychological standpoint. At its core, deception is a disruption of alignment, a mismatch between reality and representation. When a person misrepresents facts on purpose, they are creating a psychological fracture, the gap between what they want you to believe and what they know to be true. Psychologists define deception not just by untrue statements, but by intentional cognitive distortion. This distortion often stems from fear of accountability, fear of vulnerability, fear of loss, whether it's loss of status, love, reputation, or power. Now, here's the crucial truth. Liars don't usually stumble because they're stupid. They fail because they're predictable. They rely on patterns, hooks, and conversational triggers that have worked before. They don't improvise with honesty. They employ strategies. One of the most universal strategies is to regain control of the conversation, often through specific kinds of questions. Questions are powerful. They shape thought. They direct attention. And liars know this. Here's the subtle psychological mechanism. When you answer a question, you confirm the frame of the person asking it. You step into their mental territory, and that's where they want you. To understand this on a higher level, let's borrow from philosophy. Plato said that those who try to deceive shape shadows instead of truths. Nietzsche said that what's deceptive is not just falsehood, it's the perspective that hides the truth. So, when liars ask questions, they're not just probing for answers, they're shaping your perception. The first step in rising above manipulation is this. Recognize that not all questions are invitations. Some are traps. We'll start breaking those down one by one in the coming chapters, but before that, understand this. Honesty isn't just about the absence of lies, it's about the presence of self-alignment. When you are aligned with your own truth, manipulative questions lose their power. This is the foundation of psychological resilience, not just spotting deceit, but remaining anchored in your own cognitive sovereignty. Once you master that, you no longer just react, you see through patterns. And that's where true growth begins. The first manipulative question liars often ask is, "Are you sure you remember that correctly?" On the surface, this seems harmless, even caring, but psychologically, it's one of the oldest forms of gaslighting. Gaslighting is a deliberate tactic used to make you doubt your own memory, logic, and confidence. When someone frames your memory as unreliable, they are subtly inviting you to trust them instead of yourself. From a philosophical standpoint, memory is our internal anchor to reality. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am," but memory is what binds thought to experience. When someone undermines that, they weaken your sense of internal coherence. Here's how the deception works psychologically. The liar wants you to reframe your past in a way that benefits their narrative. When you second-guess your recollection, you begin to look to them for answers. This is not an accident. It's a deliberate redirection of cognitive authority. Most people believe memory is static, unchangeable, but memory is actually reconstructive. Every time we recall something, we rebuild it. Manipulators exploit this by planting seeds of doubt in that reconstructive process. So the next time someone asks you that question, notice your internal response. Do you feel doubt? Do you start replaying events and questioning yourself? That's not your weakness. That's a trigger they're intentionally pulling. The strongest defense against this first question is psychological self-validation. You don't have to be rigid or defensive, just anchored. Here's a practical strategy. Instead of immediately justifying your memory, respond with questions of your own. What part seems unclear to you? What's your perspective on the event? Do you think we have different interpretations? These responses don't concede ground, they open space for clarity. This is how you transform a manipulative conversational tactic into a moment of insight and control. Emotionally intelligent people don't fear questions, they interpret them. Remember, truth isn't threatened by scrutiny, only by manipulation. One of the most subtle manipulative questions is, why are you so sensitive? This question doesn't just deflect accountability, it pathologizes your emotional reaction. In psychological terms, this is a form of emotional invalidation. Instead of addressing the concern you raised, the person redirects the focus to your emotional state. They're saying implicitly, your emotions are the problem, not the behavior that triggered them. But emotions are not irrational, they're information. They are your internal compass, signaling what matters to you. When someone tries to delegitimize that, they're attacking your capacity for self-trust. To understand why this tactic is powerful, consider how most of us were taught to respond to emotions. We were conditioned to think that being too sensitive is a flaw. In reality, emotional awareness is a strength, not a weakness. Expect a manipulator to weaponize this conditioning. Philosophers call this philosophical deflection. Instead of addressing a valid point, they redirect the frame of the debate, often in a way that makes you look unreasonable. When someone asks, "Why are you so sensitive?" they want you to defend your emotional state instead of focusing on the behavior at issue. This is a red flag. Instead of answering why you feel something, ask yourself, what part of my emotional response is informative? What boundary is being tested here? Emotion is not reaction, it is resonance. It resonates with values, expectations, and personal boundaries. When you learn to interpret emotional signals without self-judgment, you become far less vulnerable to this manipulative question. Here's how to respond effectively. I'm not being sensitive, I'm being attentive to how this makes me feel. Let's focus on the behavior rather than the emotion. This response does three things. It removes the dismissive tone, it reframes the conversation back to the issue, and it honors your internal experience without apology. Emotional integrity isn't softness, it's strength. Liars rely on confusion. You rely on clarity, and the difference is awareness. Manipulators love generalizations. You may have heard questions like, "Why do you always overreact? Why do you never listen?" This is question distortion, turning a specific situation into a global judgment. Psychologically, this does three things: invalidates specific concerns, reframes you as a problem, and deflects accountability. From a cognitive behavioral perspective, this is a form of overgeneralizing, one of the most common thinking traps that leads to distorted beliefs. When someone says, "you always," or "you never," they are anchoring you to an extreme, and extremes distort reality. The philosophical implication is deep. When you reduce complex behavior to absolutes, you eliminate nuance. And once someone strips away nuance, they control the narrative. Nietzsche said, "When you look into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you." When someone pushes you into an extreme, they want you to perceive yourself through their mirror, not your own. So here's the truth. You do not always overreact. You do not never listen. Your behavior is contextual, influenced by patterns, triggers, history, and current conditions. When someone uses absolutes, they want you to defend a fictional identity, not your real self. The strongest response is to challenge the premise, not the emotional tone. You could say, "I don't always do that. Let's talk about the specific situation you're referring to." This move forces clarity and requires specifics. It brings the conversation out of abstraction and back into observable facts. When truth becomes concrete, manipulation loses its power. And remember, nuance is not indecision. Nuance is clarity in complexity. The next two manipulative questions tend to work together. Why are you upset? And so what do you want? At face value, these might seem like genuine attempts at understanding, but manipulators often use them as conversational pivots. Let's start with the first. Why are you upset? This question appears empathetic, but when delivered defensively, it actually redirects focus from your behavior to your reaction. The psychological effect is the same pattern we saw earlier: emotional invalidation. The stronger question, and the real one, isn't, "Why are you upset?" It's, "What behavior triggered this feeling, and what boundary was crossed?" By shifting the focus from emotion to cause, you keep the conversation anchored in accountability. Now let's look at, so what do you want? This might feel direct, but psychologically, this question can be used to make your needs seem unreasonable. Manipulators want to reduce your concerns to demands, because demands can be framed as selfish or excessive. But here's the philosophical shift. Your needs are not demands, they are boundary expressions. They tell others where your internal harmony begins and ends. Instead of reacting to this question emotionally, try, "I want clarity and mutual respect. Here's what I'm observing." This response does two things. It repurposes the question into a quest for understanding, and it elevates the conversation beyond mere negotiation into ethics. When you frame your response around principles, not just needs, you reclaim the moral ground. Manipulators want you to justify why you deserve respect. You should never have to justify that. Respect is not earned through perfection, it's honored through consistency. Every question in a conversation carries weight. Some questions are bridges. They invite understanding. Some questions are traps. They invite doubt. Liars don't just distort facts, they distort frames. They nudge your attention away from accountability, away from clarity, away from your own internal compass. But here's the empowering reality. You are not a passive respondent to someone else's narrative. You are an active interpreter of it. The ability to discern intention from wording, strategy from sincerity, is not just a communication skill. It's a life skill. When you understand why liars ask these specific questions, you begin to understand something far greater: the architecture of influence. The way people question you reveals their intentions, fears, and priorities. Every question is a reflection of what they want you to feel, believe, or do. Now let's talk about you, not the manipulator. Growth is not just about learning how others operate. It's about developing an inner clarity that cannot be shaken by external distortion. The world is full of people who will try to pull you off center, not just through lies, but through distraction, deflection, and distortion. The greatest psychological achievement is not simply spotting deception, it's maintaining self-coherence in the presence of it. Philosophers have long taught that truth is not a static object, it is a relationship between perception and reality. Existentialists remind us that we are responsible not just for what we think, but how we think. You have the power to choose how you engage with information, how you respond to challenges, how you honor your own experience. That's what makes you not just emotionally intelligent, but cognitively sovereign. And here's the final truth. Other people's lies do not define your reality. Your interpretation of truth does. You cannot control the intentions of others, but you can control your center. Stand firm in that. Walk through life with eyes open, heart aligned, and mind anchored. Because truth isn't just something you recognize, it's something you embody. And when you do, no question, manipulative or not, can shift your destiny.